Hello, my name is Moana Son. I studied at the film school INSAS in Brussels, Belgium, and I directed the film Ma mère dort, My Mother Sleeps. So this film is a kind of slice of life between a child and his mother, a mother who's kind of depressed and struggling with existence. In this film, we follow these two over a day in their kind of mundane, everyday activities. So the child, as he tries to simply bake a cake for himself, and the mother, who's rather preoccupied by her daily chores or material concerns, or on the contrary, with her kind of deep emotional inner life. So I wanted to make this film about a child's experience faced with the kind of deep and elusive sadness of a parent. I wanted to show how ungraspable and hard to explain this kind of sadness can be, especially for a child. But more broadly speaking, I wanted to kind of talk about the way sadness can also be this sometimes abyssal, mysterious and complicated to explain kind of feeling. A feeling that sometimes comes out of nowhere without warning and hits us in a way that is kind of intense, mysterious, and starts casting a shadow over our lives without much explanation. Regarding the narration and form of this film, I deliberately chose a kind of stripped down minimalistic story, as I wanted to kind of stay in the sensation of this story rather than having an overcomplicated or very psychological story. That's also why I opted for a kind of pared down visual style with static shots, sometimes rather wide and long shots, also to kind of treat this subject matter in a kind of gentle, compassionate way, with a sort of respectful distance. So that's that. And as for what inspired this film, unsurprisingly, it's a film that's largely inspired by, my own personal experiences and sensations from childhood. But I really wanted to weave this together with the kind of cinematic atmosphere that I enjoy and like to see on screen. So this film is kind of inspired by reality, but modified so as to create images that kind of transcend my own little personal story, if that makes sense. Talking about cinematic atmospheres, since the beginning of my studies at INSAS, and even before that, I've always been deeply drawn by Chantal Akerman's films. Why? Because of the non-realistic acting style she opts for, but also the very formal approach to her films. I've always been very struck by how her films move me in a quiet but deep way, despite her minimalist and kind of restrained approach to filmmaking. So for this film, Gentleman was obviously a key reference, both for the mother's acting style and also for the choice of, static shots. And it's sometimes a complicated thing to ask of an actor to opt for this kind of acting style, but Maud Richard, who played the role of the mother, accepted to embrace it and to have this restrained, sometimes even mechanical style of acting, which I think serves the film well. If I had to talk about another inspiration, I really love the work of Robert Bresson, but that's another topic. I don't think his influence on me clearly shows in the film. Maybe in a shot or two, when I film the gestures of a character, or a detail, sometimes without much context. But that's an influence that I want to keep in my research for my future films. And yeah, I think the what's similar to Ackerman's work is that Bresson also has this kind of some may say cold kind of acting style that some may say is even disembodied. But again, for me, in some mysterious way, it's this kind of distant style that really moves me the most in a very weird way. As for general inspiration when making films and the drive to make films in general, I would say for me it's often the little things, like the inner movements I would observe and feel within myself or others, or on the opposite, the more external, concrete elements like a detail, a gesture, or even an object that may seem trivial to some, but for me it carries within them almost the depth and complexity of existence. So that's something that deeply influences me, and that I hope it will continue to influence me in future work. And what moves me to make films, it's always a hard question to answer. It's a mysterious thing, but for me, it's the desire or even the necessity to convey through images something about the relationship between space and time, and something about sensations, or, as I said earlier, those very movements of life, whether they are inner movements or like more philosophical, whatever kind of movements. Universal kind of movements, let's say. And I love how movies and film can portray that in an equally mysterious way, so as to keep this mystery alive, intact, rather than trying to rationalize it or find concrete explanations for things by over psychologizing, for instance. So for me, psychology can't explain everything, and that's where cinema comes into play, for who knows really what goes on in the underlying levels of and layers of existence. So that's how I see things. Thanks for watching, and I really look forward to screening our film at the San Sebastian Film Festival soon. So see you there. Bye.